our acting village clerk to please call the roll.
Trustee Krusek,
Present.
trustee Page,
Present.
trustee Blair,
Present.
trustee Kagan,
Present.
trustee Angeles,
Present.
Mayor Cunningham.
Present.
A quorum is established.
Thank you very much. Take just a moment of silence, acting village clerk, and then we will follow with the Pledge of Allegiance, which I'm going to ask everyone to please join us in just a moment. Thank you. We now move to the Pledge of Allegiance together. I pledge allegiance
To the States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible.
under public comment. If you are here tonight to speak on the proposed McDonald's development agenda item, you will certainly have an opportunity to make public comment to the board just a little bit later in our meeting here, followed by the presentations that we have first. I'll also go over tonight's meeting outline in just a moment so that everyone has an understanding of the sequencing for this evening. Also, for those that have submitted any written comments in advance of tonight's meeting, we thank you for them, and our administrator will reference those as part of the public comment portion of this meeting so that they are entered into our official record. Aside from the proposed McDonald's development, are there any public comments related to matters not appearing on tonight's agenda? And if so, we would invite you to the podium. Okay, so seeing no one, we'll go ahead and move on. This would be under our administrator's report. So again, tonight's agenda, general order of procedures will be as follows. First will be staff presentations. Our Director of Community Development, Kimberly Clark. Applicant and developer presentation. The third item is preliminary board follow-up, questions for the applicant or our staff. 4 is public comment. 5 is board deliberation and additional questions for the applicant or staff at that time. And then 6 will be our village board vote. So now I'm moving to the public comment script for this evening. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we're going to move right along to our staff presentation. So Director Clark. Thank you. I'm sorry, it's very bright over here. My apologies. Thank you.
All right, good evening. So here we are to walk through the final approvals for what is the McDonald's project at 1335 75th Street. The 3 bullet points are the 3 requests being presented at this time. To overview in general, the village board, or excuse me, the village's process for developments. This is kind of a quick version. There is a larger flow chart, but for purposes just to walk through how applications come to the village. There's always an initial conversation that starts with the community development department. Usually it is a developer or a property owner inquiring about what is it I can do on my property, or I have an interest in doing X. So generally staff will give some general guidance on the underlying zoning and if that use is permitted or if what they're proposing requires other zoning processes. So what we always request is a pre-application meeting or a general first-time meeting so that staff can get the full understanding of what the applicant is looking to do. We will give some feedback on what we know of the immediate area or issues or things that they should consider as far as if they want to move forward with a full application. From that information, we generally communicate all interaction with the Plan Commission and the Village Board of those parties that are interested in our area, just so that we can also put that on the radar of our elected officials. And that if more information comes along, we continue to feed that communication along. Essentially, though, when an applicant is getting ready now to formally submit, we will again initiate a pre-application meeting just to reaffirm all of the items that need to be submitted, because generally a lot of applications that are coming in at a level of basically, this is what we're building, here's all the supportive documentation that's going to go with it, meaning full engineering, architecture, landscaping. In addition, it involves other agencies. For instance, if it's a development that requires IDOT review, meaning that is the Illinois Department of Transportation has to review their access point, or a county road, or maybe there's some wetland issues. So there's multiple other outside agencies within the village that we will direct applicants to make sure they start those conversations as well. Some of those conversations we can help guide or, introduce those applicants to those other individuals, but sometimes those are very separate processes on their own, that before they can come to the village, they have to have started those processes. So essentially then, the developer spends quite a bit of time usually engaging all of their parties to put forth a full application, which will allow staff then to do a full thorough review. And that is of all the disciplines, meaning engineering, planning. We will involve building department when needed, our police, our fire, all getting a hands on the overall project. And again, that can take anywhere between 2 to 5 months, because there's a lot of back and forth a lot of times with that, before we can even get them to a first meeting at the Plan Commission. These are requirements that have to be met in order to be considered an application to go forward. And that's where projects can actually spend a lot of time at. This project first had a pre-application meeting in September of 22. And we are still here right now, waiting for final approval. So obviously some projects take longer than others, and that all just depends on the site-specific issues. Our sounding board for any plan development and zoning entitlement requests is Plan Commission. They are the public body that reviews everything from the zoning code perspective. Does it comply with the code? Does it meet the standards? That is where the formal public hearing is held initially, when the residents are first notified that there is a project going forward that is needing some type of approval. And that is when the public involvement and comments do come into play. And sometimes that's also where you will see modifications to the plan. You'll see maybe cases get continued based on new feedback that the developer needs to address. And the Plan Commission is a recommending body to the village board. The village board then takes all of that information. As you all, I know, follow the Plan Commission cases, we give you all the information in advance as well. So you see those staff reports, you see those Plan Commission meeting minutes, which are fairly accurate. And also that allows you to ask additional questions of staff regarding the outcome of those meetings. Village board then, at the end of the day, takes all of that information and then makes a final decision on the actual ordinances adopting any final plan. From there, then that leads the applicant through a more internal process, which is building permit, which again has its own set of codes and regulations before they can even put a shovel in the ground. So ways, villages are always trying to find ways to, engage residents sooner in the process. And so sometimes, feedback is given and sometimes we adjust. We can make some modifications on how we can further communicate. All this information, though, we do have publicly on our website, and we do multiple ways of making notification of public meetings. And so I just wanted to briefly explain, most of these projects do have a lot of work before they can even get to a board. And that's because there's a lot of requirements that have to be met, and staff has to review all of those plans based on the standards to say you can even go forward. So I hope that helps explain a little bit on how things tend to come through from the community development to the plan commission and the village board.
Yes, I think so. And if anyone has any questions, but thank
Mhm.
you. I think that does help to kind of frame how the process is.
Sure.
So, thank you.
Lastly, we had some public comment and we heard some issues. So I think some of you may have known that, there was some concerns regarding the existing storm grates on Dunham Road. Dunham Road is a road maintained by the Village of Woodridge. So in order to address some of the issues that were brought, there was some investigation into those existing storm grates that are, as you can see on the left side, an older style of storm grate that tends to allow debris to get clogged up in there very easily, not allowing the inlet to do its work. So the Public Works Department, as they always tend to do when there are a numerous amount of residents complaining about a certain matter, they went ahead, they investigated those existing grates and put the grates that we would normally put in now. So that's the image on the right that shows the grate that will provide for less. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I flip it? Sorry. Before, after. It will provide for a less of an issue with debris being caught in there. So that brings us to the site plan for McDonald's. We have seen some changes. Fundamentally, the project is the same with some additional enhancements to further allow for vehicle and pedestrian traffic to move more efficiently through the site. We will note here in the arrow, there is an existing exit only onto the internal access drive of the shopping center that has been removed. And what that allows is then no additional access points onto that internal roadway, which would require all the traffic then to be further pushed to the east away from the Dunham Road intersection to what is that internal intersection in the shopping center. In addition, this was also feedback that the developer incorporated was to provide some more handicap parking on that south side, as there is some there today that initially was being removed. So that handicap stall and the design there will now accommodate someone to safely get out of their car now and walk across the street. Another enhancement is the sidewalk here. Now that you see that the access point's been removed, you can safely have a sidewalk there without a concern of pedestrians being in conflict with another access point. So this will connect to the Dunham Road, which their sidewalk currently leads to 75th Street, and there's a bike path system along 75th Street. Their northern access also has a path that leads off of that 75th Street onto their site. So in the event someone's coming along 75th Street, they can walk down to the parking lot and one of the access points to the store. Here in pink, as part of the conversation, the last meeting, this was a condition of their approval. The developer has since incorporated this into their site plan, and that was the dedication of right-of-way on Dunham Road. Dunham Road, eventually, when the property to the west does redevelop, will ultimately be redesigned. And to anticipate any of those improvements, the developer, per the request of staff, did allow the dedication of additional right-of-way to anticipate any future enhancements to the roadway there. So this will be formally dedicated to the village. And whenever the Dunham Road gets improved, we have that flexibility to use some additional space there. But because of that dedication, it further required the developer to get some additional relief on the site plan, meaning their landscaping area there that was originally proposed, they've removed that landscaping because it will be village right-of-way. We suggested to not plant anything there. That we'd be, okay with removing that landscaping for the better of having the right-of-way for future expansion. So that also then required some setbacks from their building to their new lot line. to allow for that dedication now to be in place. These were all minor deviations in order to accommodate the right-of-way dedication. These are just the deviations as we have the landscaping based on points. The south landscaping was removed because we have the sidewalk now. The west is along Dunham Road. Now with the dedication, we've asked them to remove that landscaping. And then the setback on Dunham. So essentially, those are just the highlights of the plan. The developer will go into more depth as far as the main conversation is how the traffic report has been updated based on those requests to have another report that further looked into the internal circulation of the shopping center, as well as some additional data on the existing areas that were initially taken back in February. So with that, that concludes staff's presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director Clark. Any questions of any board members at this time? Okay, thank you. And now we'll ask the applicant developer to come forward. Good evening. Let me see which one.
That one's yours. Maybe that's, yes. Okay. All right. Perfect.
Did you have a PowerPoint?
No, I'll just pull them up
Sure.
individually. Yep. Mayor, trustees, thank you very much. My name is Jim Olguin. I'm the zoning attorney for McDonald's, and I'm here in support of the application provided by Nair, the property owner of the parcel that we are looking at going into. Kimberly did an excellent job of outlining some of the changes that we've made, but what I wanted to do is talk about a little bit some of the history of the site, because I think both and some of my comments are for all of you, but also for the residents as to why we're here, why we're looking at the site, the time that we've invested in making sure that the site is going to function, really highlight some of the key elements in that traffic report, and also discuss some of the improvements that have been made since the last time we were here. Now, the changes that have been made to the site plan, I'll get to in a minute, but just from an initial discussion point, the reason that there have been changes is when we initially came and brought the plan to you, we believed and still believe that the plan was a good plan, was a plan that worked, and it was a safe and effective plan. But there's always room for improvement. And we went back, both the McDonald's team and the developer, and looked at everything. And by that, I mean everything on the site to see what items that we could do to make it better. And that's what took some time from the last meeting until now. And we appreciate you giving us the time to make those changes. So this project originally began back in 2022 when McDonald's approached the property owner about developing the property for a McDonald's restaurant. Now, McDonald's selection of this particular location was based on a determination that there was a gap in their restaurant coverage affecting this particular area. Now, not surprisingly, McDonald's is really the preeminent quick service restaurant company in the world. And they have a very sophisticated process of making a determination of where these gaps are located and occur. They're looking at demographic data, population density, roadway and intersection configuration, and that's just some of the data. Now, one of the key components that is included as part of that overall review is the location of existing restaurants. Obviously, putting a restaurant in a location that will have a negative or detrimental effect on our existing restaurants would be an issue and would preclude us from moving forward with that location. That analysis that was conducted by our analytics team showed that this location, and in particular, this location within that intersection, so we can kind of delve more from a general region that needs a McDonald's restaurant to which intersection, which corner makes the most sense. We reviewed all that, and this site made the most sense. Now, we understand that there are other McDonald's in the area, but there are key elements regarding the roadways that service those restaurants that somehow although they're not necessarily a physical barrier, they're a barrier in terms of people's typical travel patterns. So people going to the existing 75th Street McDonald's over by Janes Avenue, a lot of times that 355 ends up being kind of this barrier where people are using that to travel to whatever their destination, so they don't necessarily keep on going across 75th Street. So it was determined that this particular site would be an effective location for McDonald's. As part of that calculation, concerns about traffic is something that was considered as well. Because in addition to being obviously a company that sells food, one of the things that we also sell is convenience and efficiency. And if we did not identify a location that provided our customers with efficiency and convenience, they wouldn't come here. So as I will be talking through the traffic component of this project, please keep that in mind, that McDonald's is looking at that traffic report as well, because it impacts us from a business standpoint significantly. And the amount of commitment, both in terms of the amount of money that McDonald's is intending to invest on constructing a new restaurant, which is in the millions, but also we are looking at a long-term commitment to this site and the shopping center. We are signing a 20-year lease, if approved, to remain in this site. And that lease requires us to operate as a McDonald's on this site during that time period. So for us to make a commitment, both in terms of the initial construction costs and investment, but also the long-term financial commitment to remain at this site, necessitates that we be assured that from our traffic component, that this site will function not only now, but in the future. So in reviewing everything that we've reviewed from KLOA, we believe that to be the case. Sorry, it's not working for me. Hey, Kimberly, can you enlarge this for me? Yeah, all right. Thanks, Dan. My assistant, Dan, ladies and gentlemen. So this is the site plan for the McDonald's. And what I would like to at least initially go through is the drive-through component. The McDonald's that you see here, the lot size is sufficiently sized for us to incorporate our most advanced prototype drive-through configuration, which what we call it's a dual drive side-by-side drive-through. And this drive-through is our most efficient. And the efficiency, for McDonald's is based on what we like to call throughput, which is the ability to have cars go through the drive-through from placing the order to collecting the order. So some key components that we look at and what we believe makes this the most efficient are two things. One is the location of the order point. And the reason the location of the order point is important is that the sooner you can take an order from a customer, the sooner we can get the kitchen to start working on the food and preparing the order. So having sufficient distance between the order point and what we call the present window, which is the window where the food gets presented, the greater the distance, the better the efficiency. So that's key item number one. This design allows us to move the order points further back, giving our kitchen additional time to prepare the food. The second key component of this drive-through that makes it efficient is that we have 2 points of ordering. The longest component of a drive-through process that we've found is the order taking. And that can be a result of a bunch of different items. Some of it is complex orders. Some of it, you have multiple people in a car trying to provide the order. And as a result, you could have a situation where one lane might be taking longer than the other. So by having this second option, that line can still continue to move, and overall, the entire drive-through can continue to function. And also, by having 2 order points, it provides us additional stacking that you wouldn't necessarily see in other single-lane drive-through configurations. That way, we once again are more efficient and can handle our stacking on-site, and we wouldn't be spilling over into any of the adjacent drive aisles. So overall, this dual drive-through configuration results in an efficiency that is 50% better than a traditional drive-through. And once again, when we looked at this site, we wanted to make sure that we were able to put the most efficient restaurant we could on the location. And based on its size, we could. All right, turning now to traffic, which I know is something that's of a significant concern, both to the village and also to the residents that may be affected by the traffic in the area. As required by the village, a traffic impact study was submitted as part of the original application. That traffic impact study was prepared by KLOA. Lue Abuna, who's a principal at KLOA, is here this evening. And ordinarily, we would have Lue come in and do kind of a presentation on the entire traffic report. But because there's so much data, then I'll get into some of the other items. There's so much data that I think what would best serve both all of you and also the public is to highlight the key findings, and then he can respond to any specific questions once you have reviewed these items. So first, let me just, one of the things that Lue won't be able to do is kind of talk about KLOA and its standing in the transportation industry here in Northern Illinois. For those of you that don't know, KLOA is probably, if not the most preeminent traffic consulting firm in the area, it's definitely one of the most well-respected firms there is. They not only represent developers like the applicant and McDonald's, but many municipalities as well. Their reputation among all these groups is very high. So that's why when we're looking from an investment standpoint and the amount that we are preparing to invest and the time we're preparing to invest, rely on KLOA for these traffic studies. Now, KLOA prepared the initial traffic study, and they used a methodology that is really standard in the industry. And by that, I mean that they looked at the peak travel times in the area in terms of when they would expect the highest traffic concentration for the area. And logically, that makes sense in the sense when you look at when the traffic will be the worst, that is the best time to see whether the addition of a McDonald's would function. Because checking, what traffic is like when it's minimal, if the roadways can handle it at its most busy, they can handle it when it's not as busy. So they went ahead and did prepare that traffic study. They conducted the intersection traffic counts on December 1st, 2022, and December 3rd, 2022, for the Dunham Road and 75th Street intersection. And then they conducted traffic counts for the other study areas on April 20th, 2023, and April 22nd, 2023. The ultimate conclusion of that traffic study was that, and I quote, "There's sufficient capacity to accommodate the traffic estimated to be generated by the proposed McDonald's." This finding was clear, it was unambiguous, and we believe, based on our review, consistent with what we would normally see. Now, these findings were presented to the board and the Plan Commission. And there was some concern from the public regarding the length of time that from when these traffic counts were taken to when they were actually presented. Because as Kimberly mentioned, the process takes a while, and the traffic report is required to be presented as part of the application package. So when a project goes through this process, there is a lag between when the traffic impact study initially gets completed and when it gets presented. Nevertheless, we went ahead and did an update, or KLOA went ahead and updated its traffic counts, in particular for the 75th Street and Dunham Road intersection. And those updated dates were January 17th, 19th, and 20th of 2024. The results of those additional traffic counts, and I quote, "confirmed the findings of the traffic study that the traffic that will be generated by McDonald's restaurant can be accommodated by the roadway system." So once again, the new counts that happened a year afterwards, once again, just supported what was originally contained in that traffic report. Once again, this information was presented, but there were some concerns that the weather on the days that these collections were taken was very cold and might have dissuaded folks from going on the roadway, and thus not provided an accurate representation of traffic conditions. In addition, the village requested that we take a look at the internal traffic within the shopping center to make sure that there was sufficient capacity within the traffic or within the shopping center as well. This analysis was once again performed, and this included for Dunham and 75th Street a 24-hour count of the traffic. And this was done partly in response to concerns of or question why you're only looking at certain time periods within the day. Obviously, our response, those are the highest level hours, so that it makes sense to look at those. But nevertheless, we went ahead and took a look at a 24-hour look at those traffic counts. An addendum, a traffic addendum was prepared, and that addendum was provided to the village. And what that addendum noted, and there's, let's see. What that addendum noted was that across the time periods when these various traffic counts were taken, so over, in this case, a year, different seasons, and different temperatures, because the most recent counts, the weather was terrific, that across all of those, all the numbers were consistent. Let's see. This. So if you look at this graph, which is included in the addendum, the ones on the left are from 2022, the ones in the middle from January 24, and then the one from February 24. If you look, these numbers, they're within 3 to 5% of each other. And once again, that's across time, temperature, and is consistent with, with what we would have expected based on the methodology that KLOA used. So when we look at the ultimate results of all this data, there are some key items that I'd like to point out for those people that have concerns regarding the traffic. The intersection of Dunham Road and 75th Street, overall, all the approaches, overall and with all the approaches, they're continue to projected to operate at the exact same level of service as they currently operate now. Next, that McDonald's generated traffic is only looking at being anywhere between 2 and 3% of an increase in traffic at this intersection. So when we look at that, we're noting that this area, which is of concern, especially to the residents that live further to the south, that area continues to operate as it does now. And when I'm talking about the projection, we're not only talking about based on the numbers that are there right now. When KLOA is looking at those calculations, they're also including growth projection, which is a kind of like a background growth projection that would occur whether we go here or not, and the addition of the McDonald's traffic. So it's a combination of existing growth and McDonald's. And when we look at all that, that intersection continues to function at the same level of service. I think that's for the full intersection. If we get a little bit more into the specific different lanes, I think there is only one lane that has a reduction in the level of service, and that is the westbound left turn lane on 75th Street. So not affecting the Dunham Road section, but the 75th section. And the reason why there's a minor drop is that is operating already very close to the line between one level of service and another. The second reason, and the most important reason, is that the light that's there and the length of the light is what's causing that level of service to be what it is. Even driving over here today, there was one car on that left turn lane. And even with one car, because of the length of the light, that level of service is going to be lower, because there's a difference between saying that we're causing a stacking on that lane of people coming in. What we're talking about is the length of time that somebody has to wait in order to come in from that left turn lane onto Dunham. And that is a product not of McDonald's drawing all this additional traffic. It is a product of the light queue at that location. And that is why that level of service is always going to be difficult until that gets modified. From McDonald's perspective, we are prepared to continue to work with the village to the extent that we can to work with the county in order to modify, if needed, the actual timing of the light. We're also willing, if need be, if the McDonald's gets approved, to come back and do additional traffic counts to see if we can provide additional information to the village that can be taken to the county, because the county will not make these decisions on traffic lights based on our request, but provide additional data to see if we can go ahead and make modifications, to the traffic light. So we believe that that intersection continues to work. Now, I'm not a traffic engineer, and when I looked at this, the question that I had for our traffic consultant is, if I lived in that southern area, I would want to know what actual impact. You have all these numbers, you have all level of service, whatever that means, right? But what impact does this have on somebody on Dunham Road going north? What additional number of cars is it going to cause? And the McDonald's during the peak times, once again, this is the maximum, the most volume of cars that are in the area. During the peak times, per light cycle, we're looking at 1 to 2 additional cars going onto Dunham Road. That is it, 1 to 2. And based on what the traffic report indicates, that the queuing, the movements of traffic through the intersection will continue to operate as it currently does. So what we're talking about during the peak times, very minor addition of traffic per light onto that Dunham Road. Now that really addresses the Dunham Road and the traffic along with 75th Street. But we were also asked, what about internally here in the center? So KLOA went ahead and performed those counts. And what it was determined was that the level of service at these intersections are currently what they call, at a level B, and they will continue to, or between an A and a B, and they will continue to function at those exact same levels. Now, what I have to point out, and I'm sure your traffic consultant will note, that when we were talking about a level of service, that's not really a metric that you would normally use for a shopping center, or it wasn't designed for that purpose, but there really isn't a design, or there really isn't a metric for analyzing things in shopping centers, because that's not normally something that is requested to be provided. But what's helpful about that level of service component is that level of service includes a time component in terms of how long a car is waiting. And we can use that for internal of the shopping center to show that if we are looking at those times, the fact that those times are staying within the same level of service, it shows that things are going to continue to operate the way they are. So once again, even though that metric might not necessarily have been intended for an internal shopping center analysis, we can still draw some benefit of that to indicate that the way that shopping center continues to work, that it will continue to work at the same level. So these findings in the addendum, along with the original traffic report, support the conclusion that the existing roadways and the internal shopping center drives have the capacity to accommodate McDonald's generated traffic. In addition to presenting the report to the village and the village's consultant, we did provide the report to DuPage County to see if they had any comments on the report. The response after a review was that they had no comments to the contents of the report. And I'm sure you've worked with the county. If they had concerns, they would have issued comments. So we believe that the information provided by KLOA in the report is reliable. And part of that reliability, I think, makes some logical sense. We are looking at, and the data that they're looking at is traffic data for an existing shopping center that's been there for a while with existing traffic patterns. We also have the residential, which is located to the south, which unlike in most instances, there isn't an opportunity for cut-through traffic where you could say that somebody might decide that there might be a change in traffic patterns and people are now cutting through the subdivision. That opportunity isn't there just the way that is configured. So we're looking at data for an existing shopping center that's been there for a considerable amount of time, a residential area that is going, because of its nature, is going to have a very stable traffic output. So when you combine that, we have what we believe from a McDonald's standpoint, very reliable data. And as I mentioned earlier, the reliability of that data is of paramount importance to us and the investment that we're going to be making. And finally, as Kimberly mentioned, should additional development of the golf course, or should the village determine that additional work needs to be in Dunham Road, we've gone ahead and provided a dedication of the additional roadway area for the village to be able to do that. With that, what I'd like to do is talk about some of the changes that we've made to the site. Oops. Ivana, you want to help me? As I mentioned at the beginning, we believe that the original plan was safe and operationally efficient. We spent some time reviewing best ways to make things better. And when we did that, the very first thing that we looked at is the westernmost access point, which used to be in this area. And as we looked at it, we determined that it wasn't necessarily something that we needed and was going to cause more possible traffic concerns than there was a benefit. Number one, cars exiting through that intersection would be blocked even if there was just one car waiting at this stop bar. So they would need to merge in, and if there were other cars coming through, it was just an unnecessary traffic conflict. So we went ahead and removed that. The additional benefit that provided was it allowed us to connect our sidewalk so that people could come into the site without having to traverse that drive. So that was something that we felt that was of significant importance. We also, in terms of our deliveries, if they were going to use this for exiting, our deliveries had away from Dunham and they head east. So they would, if they were going to go through this exit, they would have been making a left and having to cross traffic. So we decided that it was best to put all that traffic away from Dunham Road and into this controlled intersection. To accommodate that, we widened this a little bit, but we feel that this provides us a safer, more efficient design, and it still works for McDonald's operationally. In addition to that component, what we're also providing is high visibility crosswalks at all these locations. And what we've done is we've modified a few of the existing locations. One, there was originally one down the middle. Once again, looking at this from a safety standpoint, having a crosswalk in the middle of a drive aisle isn't an ideal situation. So we moved it to this intersection, which has stop signs and pedestrian walking signs that are flashing. So it provides a controlled intersection for people to cross. Similarly, we relocated, there's a crosswalk currently here that's set back away from the stop sign. So we moved that closer to the intersection where it makes more, where it makes more sense. That relocation includes, well, a ADA compliant ramp over on this side so that we have our handicap accessible location here. So making all of these additional pedestrian-friendly additions, we believe provides our pedestrians that are in the shopping center or from McDonald's to be able to traverse back and forth in the most safe way possible. I know as part of the addendum that was submitted by KLOA, there were some pedestrian counts. Obviously, you know, those pedestrian counts now versus during summer might be different. But what is key and what is important is that regardless of what those counts are, that we have a path for pedestrians to take that is safe and effective, and we've done this both internally, also from 75th Street. So I think that it's all the additional changes that we've made, or the key items that we've made. So, well, with that, you know, I know the village board is aware of the nature of a special use request, but I think it might be beneficial for the residents in attendance today, to understand what the question is that is being presented to you as the board. The question that is being presented is not whether the village wants a McDonald's at this location. The question is whether the McDonald's and the application meets the special use standards. And if we do, it's not a question of, whether the village wants a McDonald's. It is similar to a permitted use where if we meet all the requirements, there's a level of entitlement to being able to get that. Now, whether it's an appropriate use and the standard that needs to be applied in order to make that determination is based on whether the proposal and its impact in the area is different than it would have at any other location in the village. And by that, I mean, there are some inherent characteristics of a special use that apply regardless of the location that you put that special use. In this instance, we are talking about the special use of a drive-through. Wherever you locate a drive-through special use, you are going to have cars, you are going to have a drive-through component. And consequently, the approval needs to be based, or the approval needs to be based on whether there is something about this particular project that is different, that it wouldn't apply if this was placed to someplace else. And once again, based on all the data from third-party consultants that have been provided to the village, everything that has been presented indicates that we meet the standards for the special use, that the roadways can accommodate the proposed traffic, not only for McDonald's, but including that projected growth. And because of that, we respectfully request approval of the application and of the McDonald's. We have our entire team here this evening, and we're prepared to answer any questions that you might have. But we, once again, believe that this particular site works at this location, and there is no one who has a greater vested interest in making sure that in fact is the case than McDonald's. We're investing millions to construct it. we are making a 20-year commitment to this particular site. So with that, thank you very much, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Going to ask my fellow board members if anyone has any questions for the applicant or staff at this time. Trustee Blair?
I do have one question. First of all, thank you for your explanation of the changes. I appreciate that. The new model puts in flashing pedestrian crossings, correct? Should this pass, who would be responsible for the upkeep of those should something go wrong with them? And how would we ensure that they would be maintained?
I can answer that. So for every private development such as this, they're responsible for all the interior maintenance of their parking lot. In addition, in order to help regulate any traffic regulations in private parking lots, we enter into a traffic regulation agreement. And that also has an attached plan that shows what those traffic regulations are within the parking lot. So in the event our police department needs to enforce anything, that we can. But ultimately, this will all fall on the association to maintain the common traffic apparatuses in the parking lot.
If they should malfunction or something, it goes back to the.
Correct. And that would be something also property maintenance as we do our windshield surveys. If we saw that it wasn't functioning, that would be an item for our code enforcement officer to address.
Thank you.
Anyone else, please? Trustee Page?
You mentioned traffic, but what you didn't mention was semis. So I'm assuming your deliveries come via semi. You deleted one exit, but even if they use the entrance to the east, will they not still come across traffic onto Dunham Road?
In terms of delivery trucks, so we have generally a combination of delivery trucks that get used. We probably have two a week of a larger, semi-type. One of the key things that we did is in order to make sure that this site worked was to make sure that those trucks could circulate the site and that they could in fact exit. So yes, but our trucks, when they were exiting, they would be exiting east in this direction.
So they would be
So they,
transversing all the way through the plaza down to by the Starbucks end?
yeah, either exiting, depending on where they're heading.
Mm-hmm.
So if they were heading east, they could go up this access drive to 75th Street, or if they were heading south, then yeah, they would go all the way to Lamont.
They would get all the way in front of the Kohl's to the traffic light to make the left back to the intersection.
If that was once again, it depends like where they're going after this delivery. So depending on what direction or where their next stop is,
If they
that
have to
would-
go west.
right.
Another question, you mentioned the internal traffic study
Yes.
and you called it a level B, which is acceptable. But you also acknowledge that level B is not made to apply to internal shopping plazas. It's actually meant to apply to highways. So how do we reach the conclusion that you reach on page 8 that it's an acceptable level of service?
Sure. And it's, and just to take a step back, I think everything was working at when I said B, I think there's a lot of them that might be working at an A. I was just giving you the worst case. So in terms of, as I mentioned, we needed to have some baseline in order to kind of talk about what we saw on site. And there really isn't a baseline for a internal shopping center. So we really needed it was the best metric that we could come up with. Now, we're still based on that metric, let's just get rid of the B letter, right? So we're still looking at the amount of time that a car, is like stopping at one of these internal intersections. So if we just look at time, we don't call it a level of service, we don't call it anything. What we saw and what Kayla saw is that time and their projected time was going to be the same. So yes, calling it a level of service B, we had to make a decision on how to put that metric, but when we're looking at the actual data in terms of what we project the time is going to be, we're looking at, we're going to be seeing the same amount of time to traverse those areas.
Let's switch it from time to volume. What's the volume increase that you anticipate with the McDonald's going in this location?
And in terms of volume, in terms of
Number of cars.
I guess at different locations, is there a specific location that you're?
This four-way stop, forgive me, I can only do it by store location, where you have traffic entering the McDonald's and what used to be the Panera on that corner, and I can't remember what it now is. It's the only entrance to the McDonald's.
Yeah, I'm just trying to pull up. Louis, do you have the traffic counts? Do you have the traffic counts for the? So trustee, you're just talking about the traffic counts at this intersection right here?
Yes.
Good evening, Louis Abuna with KLOA, principal with KLOA. So obviously all the traffic that will be destined to McDonald's will be entering and exiting at that intersection. So we'll be adding about 100 cars in and 100 cars out at that intersection.
A day or during peak
No,
hours?
just during the peak hour. So that's a morning peak hour. Obviously it varies during the evening and the Saturday, but morning is about 100 and 100 out.
If I remember correctly, peak hours were between 7:30 and 8:30 a.m., correct?
Um,
And so you're saying 100 additional cars will be going through this four-way stop between 7:30 and 8:30 a.m.?
yes, over 1 hour period, correct.
And evening peak is what, I think you listed it as 4:30 to 5:30?
Correct,
And
yes.
that's an additional 100 cars at the
It
four-way
will be,
stop?
will be less in the evening.
Less in the evening?
Yeah. Usually breakfast is higher than the evening.
Yeah, and trustee, part of that is breakfast is a little bit more dictated because people have to be at work by a certain period of time. For dinner, people eat dinner at different times, so you don't have as much of a single rush point during the evening hours.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
May I have a follow-up question? I have a follow-up question. You talked about the semis, perhaps a semi, maybe something smaller, going in and out for deliveries. You said it was about 2 a week. Now, is there particular times?
Sure.
Do you regulate when they can
Yes.
come and go?
Yes, and I just want to clarify, when we were talking about semis, we're looking at two. In total for a restaurant of this size, we'd probably be looking at a total of 5 deliveries, but 3 of those 5 would be smaller trucks. It's what we call our bun delivery, which is not surprisingly burger buns, and that's a very quick and easy process. There's racks, they get brought in, brought out. It's very quick. So we have about 3 of those. The larger deliveries are truck deliveries. Obviously, once again, McDonald's is very conscious of making sure that a site like this or any of its restaurants is efficient and convenient for our customers. Otherwise, they won't come here. So we make sure that we schedule our deliveries for off-peak times. so it doesn't interfere with the times where traffic is the highest on the site. And that's something that the operator who is here this evening and is also the one that owns and operates the existing one on 75th Street, they have those conversations with their suppliers to make sure that the timing works for everyone that's involved, both the restaurant and the delivery.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Trustee Page?
One more. Is this a 24-hour location?
Typically, McDonald's, when we go in a new site, we like to have, the option, for 24 hours, just because it's, part of the overall request. I have discussed it with the operator. He doesn't, envision that this would be operating at, 24 hours at this time. It'd probably, be consistent with his other location. But if you're from a request standpoint, we would like, that option. Should, once again, we're looking at at a 20-year timeframe, should demand ever get to the point where that might be appropriate, that we would have that ability. But there's no intent to do that at this time.
Anyone else? Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation, all the information. No further questions from the board at this time. We will move to public comments. And before we do that, I would like, please, to take a moment and cover our guidelines for public comments, and it's going to be very brief. We, first of all, want to thank everyone for being here this evening. Sorry. First, we would like to thank everyone for being here this evening. We know that you've taken time out of your busy schedules to be here tonight to express your feedback and voice your position on the proposed development. Please know that the village board and myself are very interested in hearing what you've had to say and what you will have to say. And we want to allow ample opportunity for public comment this evening, so that we can maximize the number of individuals and neighbors and the proposed developers to speak this evening. I would ask that we please follow our process, that your statements be at the 3-minute limit, right about that. And our village attorney, Pat, will kindly guide us with that process, letting us know when there's about 15 or 20 seconds left, just so that at that time you could please conclude your remarks. And if you have done so already, thank you very much for completing our comment card. That helps us when you're going to step up to the podium and address the village board. If you have not done that yet, we would ask that you, if you would like to address the village board, that you please complete a comment card for us. And you can hand it to any of our staff members that are here this evening. Once your name is called to speak, I'd ask that you please step up to the podium here, and we're going to ask that you just identify yourself, and if you could just state your name and your address for the public record, that would be great. Just out of consideration for everyone here in attendance, I just would ask that everything please remain respectful, and that we just keep everything in an appropriate manner, okay? If anyone has any written statements or documents that you would like to present to the village board this evening, please feel free to tender them to a village staff member, and then we will make sure that all village board members receive those items as part of the public record this evening, and that we would make sure that they would be distributed to each board member. Once the last speaker has been called, I will then close the public comment portion of our meeting and turn it over at that point to the village board for deliberation. For those who have emailed in written comments in advance, copies have already been provided to myself and the village board for our review. Thank you very much. Going to ask our village administrator, Stonich, if he would please call the first speaker.
Thank you, Mayor. First speaker this evening is John Grimmer.
John?
Again, sir, I'll ask you, like everybody else, just your name and your address. So you identify yourself so we have it for the record, and I'll let you know when your time's just about up.
All right. John Grimmer, 1233 Richfield Court. I recommend waiting until Ziegfeld Troy plans firm up before considering any special use permits for this area. I'm a retired engineer with 40+ years experience stuffing 10 pounds of, let's say, Big Macs into a 5-pound bag. I appreciate what's been done to optimize this proposal, including the latest revision, eliminating the exit on the west side of the development. I understand the desire to align the internal entrances and exits to existing driveways, but it just doesn't fit this way. The proposed facility is wedged into the corner of the shopping center. There's literally no setback along Dunham Road, which should have space allocated for a future dedicated right turn lane. Can that lane fit in the 5-foot potential right-of-way dedication? The major traffic backup I have seen already is that traffic backs up in the left turn lane on Dunham Road, extending south of the shopping center entrance exit. Cars can't enter or exit the shopping center. Cars exiting the shopping center attempting to turn left on 75th Street block Dunham Road, so cars can't get to 75th Street either. I would like a clarification from the village attorney, but I doubt that Woodridge is truly obligated to grant setback variances on both the west and north sides at this corner of the development simply because they were previously allowed. 20 feet too small, 10 versus 30 on 75th Street, 25 feet too small, 0 versus 25 on Dunham Road. I will add that these prior variances were granted long before 75th Street was 6 lanes. It is disingenuous to claim that the concession on the setback from Dunham Road is 0 feet versus 8.5 feet. It is 0 feet versus the required 25 feet, as the planned unit development previously contained a retention pond at this corner. Is the board legally required to allow this or not? I visited the corner of 75th and Dunham today because Nair's north property line is already well off the street. The setback variance on 75th Street is not too bad, barring a dedicated right turn lane for eastbound traffic on 75th Street. But the setback variance on Dunham is crazy. Please do not vote in favor of this proposal unless you have stood at the monument sign and envisioned this plan. It would be a stretch to approve this plan without the need for a special use permit. It is simply not logical to make the concessions in the plan for a special use permit
20 seconds.
to claim as a finding of fact that the special use will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and call our next speaker.
Next speaker is Carol Wyatt.
Good evening.
Hi, my name is Carol Wyatt and I live at 1261 Gulfview Drive. I have a, okay. I have a question for you. I sent some pictures of recent flooding on May 4th. I don't know if anyone was able to view them.
All public comments have been sent to the
So
board.
you have seen the pictures of the flooding in the area where, because nobody has talked about the water problems that we have in that area. And I know it was kind of pushed off that it wasn't coming from the shopping center, but the shopping center is uphill and water flows downhill, and that's where we are. So that was one of the statements I had, but you also didn't, the backup of people turning onto Dunham coming out when they are turning right out of the shopping center and we're trying to come down the road. That hasn't been addressed either. We can't get out half the time. You can't get 5 cars through the light. So with 100 cars going through there, some of those people are going to come out and they're going to go out that way and they're going to come in that way. So I think that clearly you haven't maybe listened to the people who live back on Dunham and you're throwing us under the bus, but I wish you would listen to us and not think about the pocketbook for Woodridge. I can't see that this McDonald's is doing a thing to improve the living for the people who live off Dunham or anywhere in Woodridge, truthfully.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Michael Wyatt.
Good evening.
Michael Wyatt, 1261 Gulfview Drive. I want to thank the presenters that modified the plan there. I'm glad that they spent some time doing that, but I've got a couple of questions about it. First of all, the parking spots that you have there on the south side, those are going to be the parking for any of the stores that are still across where Panera was. How do they arrive at those spots? They have to drive in, make a left, go all the way around the McDonald's there, and then pull into those spots. Okay? Very inconvenient, and there'll be very few of them available because the McDonald's customers will be there. Secondly, how many spots are there for that purpose, not on the north side, but just on the south side, compared to the number of spots there are today? And finally, what is the size of those spots versus the spots in the rest of the shopping center? From what I understand from the last presentation, they are narrower than the previous and the ones in the other part of the shopping center. So, and that's just to get a higher number of spots in there. Okay. And finally, anyone coming out of the McDonald's has to make a U-turn there to get out and then go back toward Dunham Road. It's going to be a nightmare to try to get in and out of there through one location. Gina, you mentioned that documents were sent to all of the trustees. I believe I sent it to you. Did you receive that properly? Okay, and it was distributed. Thank you. Last time, it was told that the projected revenue was going to be about $3.5 million is what they hoped. Okay. Everything that is being done here is driven by one number, projected revenues. Let's not forget that, right? And it's not just revenues for McDonald's, it's revenues for Woodridge as well. I understand that in taxes. But using that $3.5 million, and another statistic that we were told last time was that it would take approximately 2 minutes per car to get through there. And I found the average transaction being about $11 per. Okay, now, unfortunately, I'm not able to detail my statistics in such a way that shows the exact peaks and valleys. And as I had mentioned last time, you have to plan for peaks, not for the averages. Okay. But by using these numbers that you provided, it would take us approximately at 75% of those transactions happening during the peak times, morning, lunch, and dinner.
You got 20
out of-
seconds, sir.
I'm sorry?
20 seconds.
Okay. There'd be 238,000 transactions per year. It would take them far too many transactions to achieve the revenue numbers we're talking about here. And they said 2 minutes per car. Online, it says about 5.5 minutes from the time you drive in until you drive out. You cannot
time's up,
achieve
sir.
your revenue
Time's up.
numbers by using your own numbers. You
Sir.
cannot do it.
Sir, your time's up.
Unfair, 3 minutes versus over an hour. Thank you very much.
Next up, C.M. Williams.
Good evening.
Hi, Cindy Williams, 1262 Gulfview Drive. Exhibit C in the materials, the 384 pages, says the proposed use is permitted, blah, blah, blah. The proposed use will not adversely affect adjacent tenants or property owners. I believe this was prepared by our village. And I think I speak for most of us in saying that the residents have consistently opposed this project and vehemently object to the staff's incorrect statement. The proposed use will not adversely affect owners, as we have been here for all these meetings objecting to it. The traffic study shows data in the most favorable light and is statistically tainted by the entity who paid for it, McDonald's. And so the traffic study as such, this intersection has sufficient capacity to accommodate the traffic estimated to be generated. We have been down in the weeds about all this traffic and the traffic study, but the bottom line is when you're coming out onto Dunham Road and 75th Street, there's going to be a problem. And I'd like to know who has done a risk control analysis for the village. What happens when this goes badly? Has anybody looked at that? Has the village looked at, done a risk control analysis? Nobody gets to answer?
Ma'am, it's not a question and answer period. You get
Okay.
3 minutes to speak.
I
so
see how
I
that
stopped the
works.
clock to advise you of that, but
Okay.
continue.
All right, and then lastly, just one little comment. Not only ignoring residents' concerns, but disparaging those same residents is unprofessional and insulting. I think you know who you are.
Next speaker is Angel Jones.
Good evening.
Hi, my name is Dr. Angel Jones. I live at 1275 Gulfview Drive. I usually don't say I'm a physician, but I do want to mention it. I'm sorry. Oh, 1275 Gulfview Drive. That's okay. I know that we lost a child at this intersection, and I mentioned that I'm a physician at a level 1 trauma center because I take care of patients that have been shot, and kids and adults that have been hit by cars on their bikes or walking across the street. And I've had to make those calls to family members and tell them that their family member is severely ill or hurt, but not have told them that they've died because we have to wait till they get to the hospital so they don't crash themselves. And so I don't want us to forget the child that we lost at that intersection because that's our biggest fear, you know, us that have children who I've just now let my 11 and 12-year-old go to ride their bikes and walk with their cousins to the Five Below. And I tell them, make sure you cross at the mini mansions, you know, before you get down closer to the corner, the stores. But I also want to say that I sent an email to the Illinois EPA, and I don't know if an environmental impact study has been done on getting rid of the retention pond or storing the water underneath the McDonald's. Like, is it going to cause a sinkhole? I can't imagine. Is it going to be in pipes? I don't think that's really been explained where that water is going to go.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Jean Grimmer.
Hi, my name is Jeannie Grimmer. I live at 1233 Richfield Court. I just want to reiterate a few things that have already been said. We've been talking about traffic at that intersection, but we never talk in numbers of cars, volume. So if the estimates are correct, $3.5 to $4 million worth of sales, which we don't know if that's correct or not. I estimate 600 to 750 cars would be entering and exiting that area. And I agree with everyone else. We have changed many things which are to the better, but we have not addressed the output onto Dunham Road by those additional cars. In addition to the additional cars that will be going through the actual intersection at that point where the old Panera was. And what happens when that spot is filled? That Panera spot is filled. Hopefully additional traffic, additional revenue to the village would occur. And the other thing I've never heard from the village, other than in sort of passing at one of these meetings, is what is the village gaining from this? I believe the estimate was approximately $50,000. That's what the village is going to gain from this, just from the tax revenue. And I don't know what the number is, but I would hope that that was one of the first questions that all of you would have asked. I would vote no. Thank you.
Speaker is Connie Agaswara. My apologies for mispronouncing.
Good evening.
Good evening. Connie Ogasawara, 1277 Gulfview Drive. This summer, I will have lived off of Dunham Road for 35 years. Without this McDonald's, the resident has said there can be a traffic backup at 75th and Dunham. I've witnessed it many times, and God forbid you go there when a movie lets out or it's Christmas shopping. I know those are isolated incidents, but you have to take those into consideration. So I do not understand, given that 75th and Dunham already has a small, well, a lot of people would say a big traffic problem. How can 100 cars between 7:30 a.m. and 8:30 a.m. not add to that problem? That makes no sense to me whatsoever. And I will admit to being guilty of taking the rear access road to the shopping center, the alley. I have taken that as a detour for 35 years to avoid that intersection. So I find the traffic study very hard to believe. And the changes that have been made are good, but the one comment is that the west side of the site, now that seems so close to the road, it looks like they have made that aesthetically less pleasing. And we will have to drive by the trash collection areas. And I have not talked to a single resident that thinks this is a good idea. Thank you.
Next is Debbie Hall.
Good evening.
Debbie Hall, 1190 Old Creek Court. I'm right across the street, the little cul-de-sac from Gulfview Drive. To reiterate, I'm concerned about the traffic study. I am very excited that they closed the access point on the west end there, the southwest end. That was an improvement. Because the traffic study was done in December of 2022 and April of 2023. That's before we ever put our input into this. So I think that traffic study is outdated. I was told one of those days was a snow day from school. What about peak times being considered as Saturday mornings during April, May, June, July, when everyone's going to soccer and baseball with the kids who are going to stop at McDonald's after soccer and baseball? So I would consider that a peak time, as well as the movies do get out regular basis. So I still think the traffic study is inadequate. At the end, I would like some clarification about that additional 8.5 feet right away on Dunham. Does this mean that you're allowing for the future to put a right turn only lane there? If that's the case, I understand why the landscaping has been taken away. And I also like that idea. And do I understand correctly that the village can't adjust the timing of the left turn lane from Dunham Road onto 75th Street? Because from 7:30 to 8:30, people on Dunham Road do work and have to turn left to get that way. So that's impacting their work commute. That's pretty important. Parking on the south side, I think I heard that they were going to put handicap spots there. So that means if you want to go to Fannie Mae, you are going to have less spots now to even run into Fannie Mae. Would you consider putting parallel parking on the west side of Fannie Mae down that little alleyway? That's a question. Carol said about I saw the pictures of the water. I have to admit I wasn't there at the meeting when they discussed it, but that retention area was full. Do we have engineering proof that the water can be held the new way with that amount of water when that current retention area is full? And if that's the case and there is a problem, who's liable? Because 75th Street is a county road. If it starts flooding 75th Street, is the village going to be liable? Is the McDonald's going to be liable for flooding on 75th Street? Wow, I did it less than 3 minutes.
You still got 15 seconds if you want
Oh.
to say anything else.
I don't know. I want to go to Fannie Mae.
Next is Tony Cordero.
Good evening.
Hello, Tony Cordero, 1274 Gulf View Drive. I'm against the proposal for the special use drive-through. It shouldn't be an issue as to whether the site accommodates McDonald's or Nair. Even if standards are met, and so many things are below standard these days, it's about aren't being able to access, and we can see that it's negatively impacted just getting into and out of Dunham before this McDonald's even shows up. And so with 100 cars in one report per day or 500 cars in another analysis, that's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult, and it's going to be jeopardizing safety when it's kids or bicyclists trying to come in from Dunham, the only way we have in to and from our homes. The McDonald's in James has, I guess, entrances that come off of 75th directly into the McDonald's. Nothing comes out onto a roadway to a residence. And even the residents that do live off of James, they can access from, I believe, the road by Home Depot. There's another coming from where the Woodridge Park District, where, you know, from where we are right now. So there's a means for someone, other people in another community where there's a McDonald's down the street to safely, you know, get to it anywhere. We don't have that. And that's the problem with this proposal. Not just the special use drive-through, oh, it should go anywhere, but down on this site, it's not going to be good for us. This is the only way we have to and from home.
Thank you.
The last speaker card I have is Carl Miller. If anybody else wishes to make a public comment, if I could trouble you to please complete a comment card and submit it to our chief of police there. Thank you.
Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening. Carl Miller, 7847 Dunham Road. I'm in the small pocket of unincorporated area on Dunham Road. As has been said, many of my points have already been said and ventilated this evening, but I love McDonald's. I just want to urge a no vote on this for two reasons. And that's because this isn't the right place for a McDonald's. So as has been said, Dunham Road here, we have traffic and pedestrian problems already. It's not a really safe intersection. And I think this is going to add to that, particularly in light of the fact of a potential future development in Ziegfeld Troy with a potential exit there onto Dunham Road as well. And then the lack of an ability to add a right turn lane in the future on Dunham Road with this new McDonald's. And then the second reason is because we already have 5 McDonald's within, according to Google Maps, 5 McDonald's within 9 minutes of this site. So the one at Janes is 4 minutes away. The one at 63rd and 355 is 6 minutes away. 87th Street is 7 minutes away. Plainfield is 7 minutes away. And 63rd and Cass is 9 minutes away. So I just don't think it's necessary, given the risk and the cost to the residents that only have one way out for this particular site. And I understand this isn't Woodridge, but frankly, if you're going to put a McDonald's in this region, you would do it south of the old Ultra Foods in the unused parking lot there, because there's a lot more space and there's a lot of ins and outs from that shopping center. You get the same location. I realize it's a different municipality, but it's probably a better idea from a development perspective. Thank you.
Anyone else that would like to address the village board, please? I don't think we have any more comment cards, so. Seeing no one that would like to address the village board, we'll go ahead and at this point close the public comment portion of our meeting. Yes, however, we will, our administrator will go through the written comments that have already been received. Administrator Stonich.
Thank you, Mayor. So as I mentioned earlier to one of the speakers, all the written comments that were received in advance of this meeting, the board has received copies of all those, I assure you. And they will be entered into the public record. And I'm going just to list the names of those
Administrator
comments.
Stone's, and I don't want to mean to interrupt you, I apologize, but also any and all supporting documentation that were included with those emails.
Thank you, Attorney Pat. Yes, that's accurate. So I'll list those out. Linda Chan, Michael Wyatt, Cynthia Williams, Kevin Dobbin, and then Chet Zerlog. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are closing the public comment portion. Thank you very much. This time, we're going to move to board deliberation on this development proposal. And part of that, I'm going to ask each trustee to please share their perspective and feedback on the proposal before us this evening. But first, I'd like to open it up for discussion at the village board. Yes. And also, please know that this is a time if you have any questions to ask of either staff or the developers. And Nair, I also believe, is here this evening. So please, if you do have questions. Trustee Blair?
I do have a few questions or clarifications. It is my understanding that that 8 or 10 feet along Dunham is designated for a right turn lane, perhaps at some point in time. Am I incorrect?
The 8 feet of dedication is to anticipate any future right-of-way improvements. Now, I mean, ultimately, what will probably dictate that is when the Ziegfeld Troy develops, but it's to give us that ability to have as much space to fully improve that intersection when needed down the road.
I'm sorry, I have a few. Is that okay?
Please.
Okay. Reference to the flooding that recently occurred. My understanding, again, correct me if I'm wrong, that that is indeed coming from the Ziegfeld Troy side.
I believe the picture that was submitted.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Bethel.
I believe the picture that was actually submitted was of the detention pond area itself in the corner where McDonald's was going to go, correct? Right. So two separate issues, as you referenced, Trustee Blair, there's a separate issue as it relates to undetained water running off of Ziegfeld Troy. But as again, what they're doing is they're actually building underground storage. So what's in the pond is simply going to be held in a structure underground as well, in lieu of what was there that's visible in the pond.
And it should be able to accommodate any storm or?
Yeah, I think what I'm going to do is Derek Martin, who is from V3, who is our consulting engineer and does all of the stormwater work for the village, and actually does work for the county and other agencies as well. He can kind of just speak to that piece as far as how they analyze to make sure that that sufficient capacity is there for what's being built underground, if that's okay.
No, that, I would like clarification on that.
Good evening. Thank you.
So just clarification on the stormwater management. By ordinance, they're required to maintain the amount of storage that's there today. So I think that existing pond has about 2 acre-feet of storage. That's the amount of storage that's going to go underneath the parking lot and into the underground storage. If we have a storm event that's in excess of that, or there's more runoff than what that pond could currently handle today, or the underground storage can handle, the natural overflow is to the northeast into the right of way of 75th Street, and then it'll ultimately would cross over 75th. There's actually a low point there, but I don't know if we've ever seen it cross 75th. So that storage and that overflow route is separate from the Dunham Road, where we're getting the majority of the runoff from the golf course that comes down to that low point.
Thank you.
Pardon me, Trustee, would you mind if I added a little bit to
No,
that?
I want all the information
sure.
I can get. Thank you.
So yeah, I also saw those pictures of the water, and I know when you look at the picture, you're looking at there's a bunch of water just sitting in there, and I guess the one key takeaway that you have to look at is that pond, when it's full of water like that, it's doing what it's intended to do. The way that these detention facilities work is they hold water and then release it at a slower rate. So the improvements that we're proposing for this site Although it's going to be, fairly similar, we're slightly increasing the amount of detention on the site beyond what's there right now. Also that release, the mechanism that we're installing for that release of the water is better than is currently there. And also, once you do get to that situation of that overflow, it's going to be controlled a lot better with the new improvements than what's there right now, and making sure that it does go in that direction over onto 75th Street as opposed to going into Dunham. So number one, that picture, yes, there's water in there. Number two, that's what those facilities are intended to do. They're intended to hold that water for a period of time, and that the improvements that we're making are increasing the amount of detention on site and improving, the situation for once the release rate, just based on the updated structure and the direction everything is going to end up going.
Thank you. Appreciate that. One more question on anticipating 100 cars. And I'm sure you've talked about this, but I just would like clarification. How many do you really anticipate turning out onto Dunham as opposed to just going east and going out the other exits?
So trustee, the best number, and I think, once again, we can have Louis come in and talk about, their traffic counts. But the key item that I also, as a layperson, wanted to know is what does that mean in terms of people going on to Dunham and going north? Is kind of the critical or the item. And those numbers during the peak times, once again, when you have the most traffic going through, is between 1 and 2 additional cars making that right turn onto Dunham out of the shopping center. During peak times, that's what we're looking at. Now, I'm saying 1 to 2 because on some days it's like 1.5, but I think if we just rounded it, you're going to see 1 to 2 during those peak times.
During the entire peak time or?
Yeah, no, it is 1 to 2 per light cycle. So if that helps you, so it's 1 to 2 per light cycle at that traffic light.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think that's all I have right now, but if I think of something else, I'll let you know.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Trustee Angeles, please.
So I think we've talked about this before, but it came up tonight in a question from one of our residents. And the light there, that's controlled at Dunham and 75th, that's controlled by the county, correct? And I know that you've talked to the county, but is there anything you think in the future, if this does pass and if Ziegfeld Troy gets redeveloped, will they be able to adjust it? Or would they be willing to adjust that time to give the people off Dunham a little bit more time?
Well, I'll preface this by saying I'm not a traffic engineer, so our traffic engineer from V3 or KLOA may step up to correct me. But generally what happens is the roadway that carries the majority of traffic is going to get the most green time, which is obviously 75th Street. Proportionately, those side streets are going to get less green time. It's a little bit more complicated on 75th because the entire corridor is interconnected. So there's kind of a domino effect. As you start to make a change at one intersection in light timing, there are impacts on kind of the platoon of traffic that moves from light to light to try to hit those greens and keep them moving efficiently. That being said, I think historically we've had a very good relationship with DuPage County. When there have been issues, we've brought it to their attention and they've gone out to analyze. And sometimes there's equipment that's malfunctioning. Sometimes it's just based on traffic volumes or changes in traffic. Sometimes as it relates to construction, as we're doing the Janes Avenue reconstruction project right now, the county has actually made some adjustments in other lights because of that downstream impact. So to get back to the question, I think it's something, if we were seeing an issue, would ask the county to look at it and see if they could make adjustments. If there's a redevelopment that would happen, there would be a traffic impact study that the county would want to look at, because you would actually be reconstructing, I would suspect, that intersection with additional left turn, additional right turn. It would kind of depend on what the traffic is proposed that would come through there. And again, because the intersection itself is controlled by the county, it would need to be in conjunction with them by whoever that future developer might be.
Okay. May I ask one more question? Wait, don't go away. So speculative. I'm listening to all of the residents and their, concerns at the light and coming out, and I completely understand that they only have one way in and one way out. And I understand that Dunham is blocked on the other side based on what residents voted years ago. But what if that could be opened? Is that a possibility in the future to give them another way in or out?
Yeah, I think there would need to be some analysis. There's some challenges as it relates to wetlands that are in place in between. When you go essentially south of what that green space is, that neighborhood was actually originally developed underneath DuPage County and then ended up coming into the village. And at that time, I think is when that decision was made that that roadway was not going to go through. So you do have wetlands. I guess you would actually have impacts to the south because that Dunham right of way is very narrow in some parts, and there are residents that back up to what that roadway would be as you get down just off of 83rd Street. In terms of carrying that roadway through, there's actually some single family homes that are there, as well as some commercial warehouse buildings. In terms of, I'm not sure you'd be able to actually get a roadway through just based on kind of prior determinations that were made. That being said, again, it's something that could be evaluated. There is a NICOR easement in the middle as well, so you need to get permission from NICOR to traverse that for that north-south connection.
Trustee Page.
I don't have any additional questions.
Okay. Trustee Krusek.
I don't have any questions at this point. I think all of them have been answered.
Thank you. Trustee Kagan.
I had one question and had to go back to the discussion regarding the easement that we're going to allow them to encroach upon. And again, that was all based on potential activity like that. With that being said, in the remaining size of the side area there, we're looking about 5.5 feet between the roadway and then what would be the parking lot structure or the parking lot surface, 6 feet, give or take, between the roadway and the asphalt of the parking lot on that side.
Just so I'm clear, are you talking about Dunham roadway?
Yeah, on the Dunham roadway, so about 6 feet between the roadway and the asphalt of the parking lot. It
Yeah,
looks like
yeah,
about 6
yeah,
feet.
yeah,
That
about-
was my question.
Yep.
Thank you.
We originally wanted 10 feet and we couldn't get 10 feet from them.
Thank you.
No other questions at this time?
And so maybe just to Trustee Kagan, I'm sorry. So, and just on that point, it's not necessarily intent in the future that with this additional 8 feet, you're going to be paving all the way up to that point, but you're going to have space for grading in order to make the connection with the sidewalk and everything else. You'd be obviously expanding a lot more as it related to the west side, where that property would need to come from Ziegfeld. So I guess I didn't want to envision that it's
Chris,
asphalt.
that was exactly what the answer I got was yes.
No other questions? Just checking last time. Thank you. We will be moving to a vote here shortly if there's nothing further to be brought forward as board members. But I do have some remarks that I would like to make, please. Before we take our vote tonight, I would just like to make some brief remarks. To begin, on behalf of the entire village board, I want to thank each and every neighbor that is here, as well as stakeholders, again, for your time and sharing viewpoints on this proposed development, as well as questions and concerns. As a board, we've received many dozens of written comments from our Dunham Road neighbors and interested members of our public and community. And I assure you that the board and I have read each and every one of your comments. They actually are very helpful, and as well as provide some direction and guidance on overall evaluating this proposed development. In fact, in light of some specific questions and concerns raised by you, our neighbors, it was important that the board require and ask the development to complete an additional traffic study so that we could compare and contrast the results and use that data to further evaluate the proposed traffic volumes, increases, adjustments, and impacts. So it is helpful in the end of everything. Also, following the February meeting, the village directed the developer to thoroughly review the overall site plan and explore options that they believed would improve overall traffic conditions and pedestrian safety. From the board and the neighbors' questions, we saw some of the results this evening. I was going to talk a little bit more about stormwater management, but I think we have covered that sufficiently. It is always difficult in these circumstances, and I just have to say right from my heart, this is not easy. And regardless of how each board member votes this evening, and they choose to vote tonight, I would like to assure you as our neighbors that the board and I have spent countless hours like you have and months thoroughly reviewing all the information, the studies, the public comments, and also conducted our own individual site visits to further observe existing traffic conditions, site conditions, etc. Please know, when any item of this level of contention comes before us as a board for a vote, each of us on this board takes great efforts to carefully weigh all the information and concerns, and to do our very best to be thorough, thoughtful, mindful in our conversations and our deliberations, and to vote in a manner that we are in good faith and believe in the best interests of the Village of Woodridge, our neighbors, and our entire community. Thank you very much. If there's nothing further, I'm going to go ahead, please, and ask for a motion. This would be a motion to approve ordinance 2024-3. Going to ask our attorney, Pat, to please address an item related to this, but let me go ahead and read this, what this ordinance actually is, which is an ordinance granting a major amendment to an approved final plan and plat of planned unit development, including certain exceptions, a special use for a drive-through, and a final plat of subdivision at Woodgrove Festival, McDonald's, North America Real Estate, 1335 West 75th Street. Attorney Pat.
Thank you, Mayor. As the board is I believe aware, there was an addendum to the May 3rd, to the traffic impact study that was submitted by the applicant earlier today. That was submitted in response to staff's final plan review comments about the updated traffic study. Given the short period of time and obviously the board's desire not to move this any further down the road from a scheduling standpoint, there will be a motion before the board today on the one ordinance and the two resolutions. Each of those will have a proposed amendment. That amendment for ordinance 2024-3 would be a new paragraph 11 of that ordinance, which reads as follows. The foregoing approvals are subject to final engineering review and approval by the village of the May 30, 2024 traffic impact study addendum submitted by the applicant. That same language would be included as new paragraph 5 in resolution 2024-5 and also in resolution 2024-6. So the motion that would be requested, I guess, is to approve 2024-3 as amended.
Excuse me for just a moment. So we do have. So being that, yes, we do have a motion, but it has not been moved on, there are two additional items that I would like to address and ask our village board, please, for direction. One, and this is first item, and that is regarding the application or proposed outdoor dining area, which is recommended by our staff. And I know we've received information on this. Everyone should have it. It was not brought forward except in the ordinance packet, which we did receive. So the question is, if you are interested in allowing, if this would go forward, outdoor dining as recommended by staff.
Mayor, if I may, it may be helpful to have a site plan for Director Clark to pull up.
Thank you. I know we have this information, but thank you for.
Sure, no problem. And I should have reiterated it. Okay, so this kind of got lost, but initially the planners were trying to, again, optimize pedestrian and kind of open activity. And you'll see here, there's a large area that is of a green area that ideally we were in conversations with McDonald's to just have a passive area for benches, for people to enjoy, sit there or whatnot, and it could also provide a connection to the a development to the east. We did have a sketch of what we thought would be an appropriate way to just bring in a slight sidewalk and pave area. We're just looking for direction if that is something the board does want to condition this approval on, or just, decide to not make that a part of the approval and eliminate that requirement. So
If I could just ask, is just because it could easily be a pedestrian area to go to, right? Does it have bike racks, those kinds of things, seating, tables, everything? Is that what we're asking directly?
initially, it was just a path with some seating. We can also finalize that with the, ultimately, the owner of the property will be maintaining this. So, again, we were just wanting to have the minimally a path there. And if they can add additional features, that'd be great.
This is just up for discussion,
Correct.
direction.
And again, I just want to make sure that the record's clear. This provision is in section 4 of the proposed ordinance. The language says, and I quote specifically, that the grants of relief set forth in sections 2 and 3 of this ordinance are expressly made subject to the following conditions. This is condition A. If so directed by village board, the applicant shall propose an outdoor dining area as recommended by staff.
So I'm going to ask, we can make it a condition if we do agree on that. So if I could just, I'm going to go right down and ask our board members, trustee Blair, is that a condition, something you would agree to or not?
If the ordinance passes, yes, I would like to see that in there.
I'm sorry.
If it does pass, indeed, I would like to see that
Oh,
in there.
right, it's conditional. Yes, thank you.
Yes, conditional.
Okay, thank you. Conditional.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Crusoe?
Yes.
Yes.
Trustee Kagan, thank you. And then the other item, this was brought up at our earlier meetings, was something we discussed, which was a future traffic study and in about the 6-month time frame. Everyone recollect that? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and if I could, before I go to the trustees, Eric, do we need to do anything?
Right, so this would entail adding a subsection D to section 4, which are the grants of relief made subject to the following conditions. That subject D would be in this instance that the developer shall conduct a traffic study within, again, 6 months or whatever time the board directs, and shall provide same to the village for a review.
Thank you. And again, it is conditional, but we do have to go through this process. So I'm going to go ahead and ask our trustees, if you would please, would you like to add this condition of a future traffic study to be performed by the developer, proposed developer, at 6 months? Trustee-
Madam Mayor,
Please.
is that 6 months after opening should this pass, or what is it 6 months from?
I believe it was after, if it would open after that point, 6 months.
Okay.
Mayor, if I may to clarify, there was certainly some discussions about what would trigger a request to the county about traffic signal timing and adjustments related thereto. And specifically, while we do have a good relationship with the county and they work with us very well to consider adjustments and will oftentimes do so, there are moments where they will require a traffic study to use as the basis to inform that adjustment to the timing of the signal. And in which case, this may be a condition upon which the board, if there is a concern that is raised at the intersection of which there is additional queuing or backing that isn't believed to be adversely impacting the intersection, that would subsequently trigger a request to the county, perhaps they may require us a traffic study. And so in that case, if they do require that, we would impose upon the developer to pay for that study and to conduct it, and for us to submit that study as part of the county's request.
And in fairness, I want to be sure, I believe I heard you say earlier that you would, McDonald's would be willing to work with and participate with that. Am I correct? Okay, I thought so. Okay,
So,
thank
so Mayor, if I may, I believe the question now for the board is sort of binary, which is, do you want to require a traffic study 6 months after the issuance of a certificate of occupancy? Or do you want to require a traffic study to be paid for by the developer in the event the county requires the village to produce a traffic study in response to a question about light timing?
May I ask a question?
Yeah, I'm going to.
No, sorry, sir. The public comment area is over. This is for board discussion.
That's unfortunate.
So I guess I would like input because, so one is just a general traffic study at 6 months versus the county light timing. And it could be, actually, the study could be triggered by the need precipitated by the timing of the light. So I think that maybe, if I could just ask, what is the preference? And going to start with Trustee Kagan.
My preference would be when directed by village staff, should we need it for submittal of data to the county.
Thank you very much. So the light timing with the county. Okay.
I would agree with Trustee Kagan.
Okay, thank you very much. Trustee Page.
I disagree with the gentleman. 6 months, no matter what.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Annalise.
With request of the county.
Thank you. Trustee Blair.
Request to the county.
Okay, thank you. So it would be just by the numbers, the request by the request for light timing, which would relate to the county. Okay.
Mayor, if I may propose language.
Yes, please. Thank you.
So D would then, under section 4D would be, if a traffic study is required by DuPage County related to timing of traffic lights at Dunham, sorry, I'm writing as I'm quoting, Dunham Road and 75th Street, developer shall pay for and submit said traffic study to the village.
Thank you, Attorney Pat.
So Mayor, again, just to kind of tie a bow on this, I believe you are asking for a motion with the 2 amendments that were so proposed, which is the change to section 4D that I just referenced, as well as the new paragraph 11 that I read a few minutes ago.
Thank you very much, Attorney Pat. So before us again, I'm going to ask please for a motion to approve ordinance 2024-3 with the two amendments.
So moved.
Thank you, trustee Page, and a second.
Second.
Thank you, trustee Kagan. Any other discussion on this item? Anyone else? If our acting clerk would please call the roll.
Trustee Page,
No.
trustee Blair,
Aye.
trustee Kagan,
Aye.
trustee Angeles. Aye. Trustee Krusek.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Next, agenda item 2. There are 3 total agenda items. They all relate to this proposed McDonald's. Item 2 is resolution 2024-5, is a resolution authorizing the mayor and the village clerk to execute a certain improvement agreement between the village of Woodridge and Nair Woodridge Management LLC at 1335 75th Street. This is the McDonald's.
Again, as previously indicated, there would be, this motion would be as amended with the new paragraph 5, which would read as follows. The foregoing approvals are subject to final engineering, review, and approval by the village of the May 30, 2024 Traffic Impact Study Addendum submitted by the applicant.
Very much. I'm going to ask for a motion to approve resolution 2024-5, please.
So moved.
Thank you, trustee Krusek, and a second.
Second.
Thank you, trustee Angeles. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, if our acting clerk would please call the roll.
Krusek,
Aye.
trustee Page.
No.
Motion passes.
Last item 3, resolution 2024-6, resolution authorizing the mayor and village clerk to execute a certain traffic regulation agreement between the village of Woodridge and Nair Woodridge Management LLC at 1335 75th Street. This is McDonald's.
I'm going to ask for a motion, please, to approve item resolution 2024-6. It is item 3.
With the following amendment, new paragraph 5, and the same language as stated previously as follows. The foregoing approvals are subject to final engineering review and approval by the village of the May 30, 2024 Traffic Impact Study Addendum submitted by the applicant.
Thank you very much. Motion, please.
So moved.
Thank you, trustee Blair. Second.
Second.
Thank you, trustee Angeles. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, if our acting clerk would please call the roll.
Trustee Blair,
Aye.
trustee Kagan,
Aye.
trustee Angeles. Aye. Trustee Krusek,
Aye.
trustee Page.
No.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. And with no further business to discuss this evening, I would like to please have a motion to adjourn the regular meeting of the village board for the village of Woodridge. Motion?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second, please.
Second.
All those in favor, please sign aye.
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 We are adjourned. It is 8:07 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Corporate sellouts, that's all we are. I second that motion. If stuff